Hi, everyone. I'm Gold Derby News and Features Editor Ray Richmond, and I'm here today with two-time Critics' Choice Award nominee
Woo.
Brandon Scott Jones, who portrays the pompous Revolutionary War captain Isaac Higgintoot on the CBS comedy hit Ghosts. So, Brandon, could you ever have predicted that your star-making role would come from portraying someone who's been dead for nearly 250 years?
No, I wish.
I mean, I know you were dying to be a star, but you didn't
I,
necessarily have to take it literally.
exactly. I was always dying to be a star. I didn't realize it would take this. I started to realize I was like, it's kind of like a little pattern in my career. Like I was dead on The Good Place, and then I was dead. I'm dead, and I come back to life in Renfield. I'm like, I tend to play people that are, that have already died. So I guess that maybe something I should take a look at with
Have you
myself.
discussed this with your therapist? I don't know.
Yes, exactly. Like people want me to be dead. I'm like, is this a problem?
Should I take this personally?
Should I
Um,
take this personally?
yeah. Well, now season three was a big one for you and for Isaac. At the risk of leaking spoilers, you almost got hitched to Nigel.
Almost.
Instead, you spurned him at the altar and
Yeah.
got your own season-ending cliffhanger. How did you feel about the way things wrapped?
I was just as surprised as I think some people watching it for the first time as well. Here's the way I look at it is that Isaac sort of this is like the first time he's really paying the price for something. Like he's almost getting a little bit of a comeuppance because he's a messy dude. He's a messy dude running around that house. Like he killed a man, ended up proposing to him, and then left him at the altar. I think just even that little thread deserves some sort of catalyst for atonement. And so I hope that that's what this is going to be for him, if that makes
Yeah,
any
yeah.
sense.
You think there should be some penalty for killing someone?
You think so? You think so? And then he left this other woman in the dirt as well. And so now, again, without a spoil, trying to be spoiler free, his comeuppance, is going to have something to do with that, I imagine.
Although we should have a discussion about that, Brandon, about the whole
Yeah,
spoiler idea, because it's like, at what point does it cease to be a spoiler? Because it's like this is already aired.
yeah,
Do you keep spoilers from people for 2 or 3 years, or do you expect that they're ever going to watch something, and so you have to? I
yeah.
don't know.
I think
I'm always wondering what the spoiler thing even means.
I think I'm actually here's a rule that I have is if it's how the show in its entirety ends, then I think you can keep it a little bit longer. But if it's just like a season or an episode, you've lost your privilege.
Right.
After a certain amount of time. Like give
The fact
people
that you guys have been a hit now for 3 years, you're right. There's a little
yeah,
more privilege going on.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
and congrats on being on a show that's got some staying power on a
Thank you.
comedy, no less, on network television, which is not easy. So is Isaac going to disappear for a while now, or you probably they'd have to kill you if they told you?
I know I would hope that they would let me know if I have a job. If I have a job or not. But I think, you know what, even if he's not in the first few episodes, I think he's still around. But I hope I'm there. I hope so. I'm looking forward to going back to work for sure. And I think I'll just even as an actor, I'll get like FOMO if if everybody's up there filming and I'm not there because I'm
Well,
lost in the dirt somewhere.
you would hope your agent would share some of this info with you as well.
Yes. Yes,
Uh,
absolutely. God, every time they call, I'm always like, oh God, is this it? Which is a great, a great relationship.
that's called being an actor, where
Yeah.
even if you've had a steady job, you're getting a steady paycheck for a while, you still feel like this could all disappear in 10 seconds. That's
Oh,
just the insecurity of the business you're
100%. It never has gone away. I really thought, I remember being like, just when I was starting out too, I was like, God, I would just love something steady. I would love something real. And then like literally like it's only compounded my fear that it's all gonna go away.
in. Yeah, that's the thing is, oh, now you actually know what you'd be missing if it did go wrong.
Yes, exactly.
I'm so sorry. I'm
Oh my
so
God,
sorry
Ray.
that you've got a
No,
steady
no, you're
job
really
now.
unlocking something in me right now. Just like the headline of this
Good.
article will be like sobbing Gold Derby interview.
Good. Well, anything to go viral. We don't really
Hey,
care about your feelings. It's all about us.
let's do
Uh,
it.
so if you could choose one thing, Brandon, one moment maybe from season three, would it have
Mhm.
been uh, leaving Nigel at the altar? Would it have been something else? Is there something that you tell people at parties? Oh my God, that was just so much fun in season.
Yeah, I would say definitely like the leaving Nigel at the altar. I think discovering that dinosaurs were real, that character getting to find out midway through the season that he and his contemporaries had no idea that these huge monsters roamed the earth, I think was like that was very fun because it was fun to sort of play. He like we were just talking like Isaac's a little like a messy dude, and he's always a little stressed. He's always got some sort of like chip on his shoulder about something, and then to play like just like the extreme like childlike wonderment of discovering that, oh my God, Jurassic Park, wait, those weren't just monsters created for them. Like I thought that was a fantasy. um that was also one of the most fun. I mean, anytime I get to do anything with John Hartman, who plays Nigel, amazing. But then in addition to that, I love discovering dinosaurs were
You
real.
guys have great chemistry together on screen too.
Thank you.
Um, and just as your backstory, just how tough is it to repress one's true sexual orientation for more than 2 centuries?
Yeah, I imagine that the cracks began to show for me after when I was like starting at like age 20 and I was like holding on to something, and I know that I can't imagine to do it, to live a life and then spend 250 years dead when a lot of the other things don't even matter anymore, but to still hold on to it, uh that shame around it, that is tough. And I think that was sort of one of the ways in with this character that I thought was really, really interesting for me, which was just like, wow, what must this person like this guy was alive and trying to be around a bunch of people starting a country and was sort of like really like promoting the ideology that maybe necessarily wouldn't have benefited him. You know what I mean? Like it's I think it's a really interesting
It
thing
is,
to,
and it is, and I thought of that too. It's like everything has changed since he's been, in purgatory.
yeah, 100%. And he had no idea that like this world could evolve past that because he again was around like I just imagine that what that time was. And well, in the little research and like the research that I had done with it was just like again, like we're starting a country and it's going to be founded on these ideas and these reasons and this belief and all of this. And then he was there wanting so desperately to be one of those founding fathers, and that wasn't, he was sort of promoting something that was like, wait a second, I'm also part of this country, but this isn't going to represent me correctly.
Right, right. Very
Yeah.
interesting. How much, Brandon, does your improv background with UCB help you on Ghosts, if at all? I mean, did the producers or directors ever give you the okay to do any improv takes?
Yeah, we get a couple takes to play around with, or if like something kind of comes up and you make a big choice. It doesn't necessarily mean it'll make the cut. But what I always thought with improv was that it's more of a tool sometimes than it is the product, right? That like if I can sort of like improvise within the confines of this character, maybe if it doesn't make it in the air, if it doesn't make it to air, or if it doesn't necessarily make sense within that episode or in that scene or whatever, maybe there's something that I've unlocked performance wise within myself. Maybe there's some language that came out of it that I didn't know existed before, but the writers who were watching it saw and they're like, oh, that could be like an interesting way to go. And I think that's the most fun about improvising too, especially when you have other people who on the set who have improv experience. You find that you're like, oh, we're not just trying to create something funny, we are trying to like get into dynamics as well. That oh, I reacted this way, I'm not saying it's right, but it's like if I had the instinct to follow that, I think that's the fun stuff about improv.
And it helps to have this ensemble that's so good.
God.
And
Yeah,
it really does seem to be an ensemble in the best sense. I mean, you
yeah.
all seem to instinctively understand that it's important that everyone contribute equally. It's not just blah, 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 my line, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, exactly. That is I sometimes slip into like a caricature of like an actor in between takes where I'm just like, all right, I just tune it all out until I hear my cue word. But no, that is exactly, that's the thing that I love the most about this show is that we really we spend so much time together too, not just even on set, but then when we're in between takes, because we have this little like village of like our little dressing rooms, and we can eat lunch together. And then, we shoot up in Montreal where we kind of on the weekends, we're the people we hang out with too. And so um it really is this lovely thing to discover dynamics offset, find them, how does that affect what goes on set, and then how do you find a dynamic on set that you want to explore even like offset
Mhm.
where you get to talk. It's so collaborative. It's the thing that I love the most, and I think what makes it work is that it's the thing that everybody else loves the most too, and I love it so much.
Yeah, that's right. You shoot in Montreal, so you're hanging
Mhm.
out in Quebec like for more than half the year.
Yes.
What's that like? I can't say I've known about any other show that's yeah. You hear about Vancouver a lot, but
Yeah.
not Montreal. What was how was the decision made to shoot there?
The decision that made to shoot there, I don't know. That was something that above my pay grade, and I never questioned it. But I will say it's fun. It makes you feel a little bit further away than you are because there's a kind of a language barrier, right? Like everything is in French. And so I started taking French classes. Rebecca and I both started taking French classes and to try to improve. And so we could like, just assimilate more into the world. Um, but I love it so much. There's also this really interesting thing is that the crew all speaks French to each other. And so when you're on set, sometimes there can be a lot of noise around, but when you don't understand instinctually what somebody is saying, you can actually focus in like a different way. And I love it. It's very, very cool. It's finally been a catalyst for me to learn another language. Whether I've been doing that successfully is another question. But I
It's
really do enjoy it.
Canadian French instead of France French, of course.
It's
Slightly different.
wow. But yeah, it's great. And the food is phenomenal. Great food city. Great food city.
Now, I want to word this properly, Brandon. Is there any
Yeah.
sort of sense of relief today that a lot of your Upright Citizens Brigade mates, where I know for a long time making names for themselves, you hadn't quite found your niche?
Yeah.
Not that you would have ever wished them ill, of
No,
course, but
never.
you don't want to be the one left at the starting gate either. And now you're not.
Yeah. It's nice. There's a definite like relief. Those relationships that I made at UCB when I was kind of coming up are some of the most like meaningful friendships that I have as well. It's very very reminiscent of the way the work on Ghosts happens, where you're just sort of collaborating and hanging out with people and getting ideas and wanting to just explore each other's comedy in a certain way. And it's been one of the most satisfying things in the world to see my friends that I got to perform with early on go on and have these wonderful careers. I when I worked when I was on The Good Place, so Darcy Carden, one of my all-time best friends, obviously incredible actor and starred on that show. That being on that show with her was the first time where I was just like, this is everything I could have wanted in terms of working with people you love, working with minds that you love, and getting to do it with a history that we have where like we were both performing in like basements around New York City or like in clubs at like 10:30 midnight shows, and then getting to do it on like the set of a sitcom is wild and very, very cool. And so in terms for myself, definitely some relief. I'm happy it worked out. I'm like, how can I not be? It's amazing. And there's this little thing that where I'm like, I also know 25 other people that are gonna have that moment too. And I cannot wait for the world to know about who they all are. And you already might know some of them, but like even like that more regular
Uh-huh.
show. Yeah.
Yeah, I know you had the arc on The Good Place, and of course the other two. Um,
Yeah.
how is the Ghost experience different from those other? I know that this isn't an arc; you're a regular.
Yeah.
Is that a huge difference to actually have something that you know? Well, I'm coming back, and this is a regular job. It's not just an arc.
Yeah, one of the things that it changes is the moments in between your storyline. So like on Ghosts, Like there are, like this season I had the storyline of getting married to Nigel, and then whether or not that does or doesn't happen and all that. But there's, we do a lot of episodes normally throughout the season where we do like 22, and there's going to be moments where your character isn't in mainly one of the stories. So it's about finding the fun and finding the specificity of those more expository moments with your character because you have the time and the patience to do it. Where if you're a character arc on another show, if you're a guest star, you're really kind of coming in to play that story and that story alone. But this, you get to be a part and like little bits and pieces of other people's stories and get to exist in moments where you're maybe not actively doing something. And so still finding your character in those moments, that's the new skill that I think that comes with being gratefully like a
Mhm.
series regular for sure.
You know, I really do love the show. And your work in it, Brandon. But I mean, it's just so much fun.
Thank
It
you.
doesn't look or feel like anything else on in certainly in network TV. And it's heartening though to see a network primetime comedy that aims primarily for laughs. Um,
Yeah.
do you find that a lot of shows billing themselves as comedies these days often sort of have a different agenda, almost maybe to make you feel more uncomfortable than amused?
Yeah, but that almost like the laughter is more like instead of ha ha ha,
Right. Not to
that
name names.
not to name names. No, never, never. You know what? Look, here's Ray, you're kind of hitting on something here. No, here's what I would say. It was like, making a comedy is hard, right? Like to write it, to shoot it, to perform it, to direct it, to edit it, like all of these like things kind of have to be in place because it's so rhythmic, right? And I think if you attempt to make a show that to make people laugh, that you can consider it a comedy. I know that sometimes those shows are sort of working in a way that you're like, yes, it's more that like discomfort that like or that uncomfortable feeling that they're sort of like aiming for. If they want to bill it as a comedy, like absolutely bill it as a comedy. There's difference, I guess, a different level either way, whether you're attempting to make people laugh or you're attempting to make people uncomfortable, those shows I find often are phenomenal and they're still really, really fucking good. It's part of my language. But they really, really are. So if they're making a comedy and I'm not laughing, I'm still interested. I'm still like enjoying it. But yeah, I also wonder, I don't know, what do you think about it? Can I ask you this question actually a little bit? Like,
Please.
wonder if it wasn't for awards consideration, you know what I mean, an awards category placement, do you think that there we would be having this conversation? Or do you think that they
No. Oh no,
more
no. It's
care?
very much
Yeah,
format based and time frame based for
yeah,
and it is for awards consideration, absolutely, where they have to build
yeah.
themselves as one or the other instead of because there is no dramedy category.
Yes, yeah, yeah,
And often it will be easier for them to compete, say, in a comedy category than in a drama category. Like if you're going against Succession, for instance, and so
yes.
maybe you want to go comedy instead because it just is more easier to compete.
Oh
But
yeah, interesting.
the
Yeah,
great thing
yeah,
about Ghosts, I think, Brandon, I think you would agree, is that you're all permitted to have these moments of poignance and reflection as well
yeah,
inside the comedy and get your, exercise, those acting chops in a
yeah.
much more complete way too.
Yeah, that I love. I like that we can be joke forward, but still find the moments because I think again, going back to like the rhythm nature of comedy is that like you can have like joke, 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 but it's also important to rest that joke so that you can almost like build up a little bit more, momentum into the next time you kind of pay off that joke. I love that, our show is a very self-reflecting show. Like these are characters that are trapped in this space and they don't know why they're still there. That they episode 3 of the entire series they talk about like the dream is to get sucked off, and so there is or to like move on to the next realm or but I think what's interesting is that that does kind of cause these characters to sort of look inward a little bit, and that can be dramatic and sad, and that can be tough and tricky, and have all of those things. And I think that only hopefully builds a well to make a joke later on a little bit funnier. But I
Mhm.
do love being able to play both sides of it and then knowing that we're still going for that joke at the end.
And so now if we come full circle, Brandon, where you're like, before you're like, God, I just wish I could be a regular on a show. And now it's, oh God, what if this thing goes for a decade? How will I ever have time for anything else?
Yeah. I think it is one of those things where I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna not want to have this job because having a job is amazing. But I do think the easiest way to say it is that I would make this show for as long as everybody wants to make this show. Like that's the jam for me, is that if people are still inspired to make it and to write it and to direct it and produce it and put it out there, and the actors are all still pumped to sort of keep exploring, then that's it. But I think I don't want to speak for everyone, but I could imagine a world where anybody on the creative end of this, if they're not fully behind it, then there's no reason to keep doing it. So I won't look that far ahead, but I would look and just say, like, I'm excited to go back to work. I'm excited to see my friends. I'm excited to keep exploring these characters. And I think if we can start seasons that way, every time we can go for as long or as little as we want.
Well, it really does seem like everybody's having a ball on this show. You
Yeah.
can tell you can tell when it's drudgery for people or when it's just pure joy. And it looks like such a joyous experience for everybody on the show.
Yeah, we're oddly close. We're oddly like really good. It really is joyous. Like our crew up in Montreal is just like unbelievable. They do their job in two languages and they're so funny and so creative and so good at what they do. Like you kind of mentioned something that the way it looks too, like our set designer, our costume designer, they do such a intricate job, and it's so fun to see that kind of care put into a 21-minute comedy, you know?
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to leave things there. All three
Right.
seasons of Ghosts stream on Paramount Plus. Uh, Brendan Scott Jones, best of luck to you this Emmy season. Let's get you a nomination. And thanks for joining us today at Gold Derby.
Thank you so much, right? This was awesome. It was really lovely to talk to you.
Thank you.